We're CDR, I'm Matt, he's Bryn, and this is our second goddamn attempt at OK Computer, the podcast.
Yay!
What happened the first time, Bryn?
Who knows? Shit happens. Who fucking
And they
cares?
say that Apple computers never fuck up.
I think they're nothing but a fuck up.
Also, we pushed the stop button, and man, did we stop more than the friggin' podcast.
Oh yeah, just too much to give out.
So, whilst we're going to do our best to recreate the magic that was the exceptional first episode, you're going to have to believe it. This is a tribute to the first OK Computer podcast.
Yeah, I wonder how this is going to go. This is going to be different for sure. Okay, so
Radiohead.
1997.
This album is 1997. This is their third album.
Not
OK
the only
Computer.
thing to come out besides Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh, yeah. So Bryn had a big, long diatribe about all the things that came out in 1997.
Oh,
now
yeah.
we don't get to hear it.
You can.
What else?
What else?
What else came out in 1997?
Let's see.
Titanic was one of those.
Titanic was definitely one of them. Harry Potter came out. The book. Biggie died. So did Versace. He was murdered. Probably an angry lover. Mother Teresa and Princess Diana had their funeral. Ba 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 ba. Joe the Camel was taken off Camel Smokes. That's a fucking shame right
Is that
there.
really?
That's
That's an absolute travesty.
that was damn true.
It's like second only to the Titanic.
And the Mars something landed.
The Mars thing did a Mars.
Haley's
Halley's Comet appeared.
Haley's bloop, which also caused a massacre,
Oh,
cult murder.
Cult death.
Yeah, cool. Heaven's Gate, weird people.
Yeah,
Fuck
cool.
them. Who cares?
And this album was released.
Oh yeah,
Radiohead's third album after Pablo Honey and
Voted.
Friends.
yep.
So I chose it because it's something of a progenitor to a number of bands in the early 2000s that I particularly like, namely Muse, Killers, Brand New, and a whole host of Indian alternative rock acts. I wanted to listen to this album to see if it was worth my time and effort and worth being called something that would inspire bands that I particularly like.
And your first thoughts?
So on the first listen, several weeks ago now, it felt a little bit inaccessible to start with. The first song is Airbag, and that has a slow, droning, single note riff that sort of goes through, and then the song sort of lumbers
Fast picking up a little bit, becomes broken, and then screeching at the end, which sounded like my car was breaking.
So it really depends on what you were looking for when you were going into it, and I guess I didn't have any preconceived notions, but the song didn't initially take me. Paranoid Android's next, and
Which is probably one of their biggest one, and when they first released it, everyone said it was commercial suicide, being 6 minutes and 30 seconds.
And whilst I grew to like this song, on the first listen through, it doesn't grab me by the collar and haul me in, nor does the next track, which is Subterranean.
You still don't... I still like Subterranean, Homesick, Alien.
The problem is that now we're on week 2, and consequently the second podcast of OK Computer, but the only one that's going to survive. Please survive. I don't want to do this a third time.
No?
It's grown on me, but it's on the
still...
first listen through, it didn't grab me. The song that really grabbed me was Exit Music.
You still like an Exit Music, which is the exit song for Romeo and Juliet the year before. Yep.
You're so good. You still have the same little tidbits. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that from last week.
And I still listen to that song and I go, it fits that movie so well.
See, the song just had every hallmark of an awesome progressive track, where the song starts off really softly spoken, the vocals are really understated considering what's being sung about, and as the song progresses you get these kind of ugly backing vocals that might just be synth, I can't really tell, but ugly in a way that suits the track construction. And then you get towards the third part of the song, towards the back end, and if you close your eyes and you'd never heard of Radiohead, you'd have thought, this sounds exactly like Muse. Which must infuriate Radiohead fans to hear me say something like that.
I don't know why it would, because they're just as great as each other. Well, I think Muse is probably better.
It's like listening to Beatles music and going, this kind of sounds like Oasis, I don't know how well the Beatles fans would take to such a comment. So, but that song and the way it really sort of softly speaks that Hope You Choke lyric at the end. I was in Hook, Line and Sinker, and I remember telling you last week, this then started a patch of maybe 3 or 4 songs in a row where I thought the music was a little bit more accessible and really sort of drew me in. So after Exit Music, you have Let Down, which I actually quite like as a track.
Yeah.
It was probably one of those songs that I liked less and less the more I listened to it, but on the first listen through, it has this really cathartic build towards it, despite the fact that it's ultimately a sad sack song.
Yeah.
And then you have Karma Police,
Which is probably one of my favorites on there.
and so like by that stage, I'm in for the journey, and I was actually really looking forward to going back and listening to the intro tracks. And that was the thing. Once I had bought in the third and fourth listen of Airbag and Paranoid Android, I'm really enjoying the track. It's like there's just enough tracks on the first listen through to get your attention, and like most of those tracks end up being my lesser favorite ones, and my more favorite ones were, say, Airbag, Paranoid Android, and Exit Music was still an awesome track.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was funny what tracks drew me in and what tracks then held me there on repeated listens.
As time goes by, you picked
What
up
about
different
you? What
parts.
was your journey with it?
Look, when I first listened to it, I did not want to listen to it again. We established this last time. This time when I knew we were going to have to redo this podcast, I was less sour about listening to it again because I knew that this is quite a enjoyable journey because I know what's the outcome. I know that it's not an up and down ride of emotional, pulling you by the heartstring, but it does. it is super down melancholy. Yeah, it's just, I kind of like the fact that it just kind of stayed in this one area where it didn't fuck you. The last track being The Tourist, and it's time to slow down. Everything you need to slow down. By the time the song finishes, I'm like, thank fucking God, let me get back to work. As you come in with Airbag, I think it's really good, especially with the intros, the cello. It's not very complicated and always seems to change paces and change how the strumming is going, especially in Paranoid Android. As I listened to it this time and every time you brought it up, that it goes from a 4 beat to a 3, 4, 7, 8. It just changes, and I was counting and I'm going, and then it just stops and it goes back to almost like this 4/4 to nothing, just the drums. It's probably the most emotional drawing out of you, and energy wise.
Interesting,
yeah. But being Paranoid Android, it probably is second biggest song out of all of them, bar Creep being, I actually think, kind of a shit song myself.
Okay, so the preamble I gave at the start of podcast 1 for this album is the fact that there's something of a meme culture within Radiohead fan space where, if you're seen to be a Radiohead fan who likes Pablo Honey as their best album, you're probably not a real Radiohead fan. And then there's a subset where if you like The Bends and OK Computer as Radiohead, maybe you're kind of a Radiohead fan.
But if you like Kid A, which I listened to,
releases, I showed Bryn several tracks from Kid A afterwards and asked him, how do you think Radiohead artistically moved from OK Computer?
Honestly, I listened to that again today. I only got halfway through. But to me, it didn't change all that much. They just kind of put it
all that much.
Oh, as time went by, the first couple of songs are really, we're not on this album. We're not doing this album.
They go from structured songs to songs without structure.
Yeah, and then they get into about 4 or 5 songs, and then they go back to what they did in OK Computer. And I was like, so they didn't really do too much different. They just had a couple of songs that people would be like, what the fuck? Yes, the first 2 songs, you're like, what is going on? It's like you playing me Clippings intro, and I'm just like, what is going to happen? But yeah, it's not the one we're talking about. Subterranean Homesick Alien, I still love it. It really does draw me into that holiday beach theme, and uptight. And I really do like it how they give you the wave sound even just through the drums. Did you hear it this time? Did you go back?
Look,
can you hear it crashing?
Maybe not trying to pick it out specifically. It's funny, like the key things that you always pick out when you go back on repeated listens. Like things that draw my attention are like the vocal melodies on Airbag, the 7/8 time signature in
Paranoid Android, yeah.
Paranoid Android.
And then we go, look, Karma Police. I still think it's probably one of the best ones. Piano bring in, and then the bass and the drum drops, and then it's just a Justice Warrior song to me.
It's got a real 1984 vibe.
We talked about that as well. Yeah, it's definitely George Orwell's book signature song all over it. With Crash Your Party, this is what you get. This is what you get for not inviting me. Yeah. It just sounds like a
girl. Her Hitler hairdo is making me ill.
Yeah. Just keyboard warrior people getting upset.
In a time probably long before Keyboard Warriors, to be fair.
Yeah, true.
97. I mean, this
This
really
is probably
just-
the original Trolls really came about.
This song really just feels like an ode to those who feel like they're getting crushed by mainstream thought.
Yeah, if you skip out the extremely odd Fitter Happier, then we move into Electioneering, which is also probably one of the other favourites on the album.
Definitely the most upbeat.
Every time it starts, I always think of a Western blues, someone playing with the steel guitar.
Yeah.
You know, there's not enough of those around, and I love it.
Yeah.
And that song really brings me with like your more upbeat, more rocky slide. And you know, we both said this last time. It would be unbelievably sick live.
Yeah.
It would be probably the best one you would want to see live.
Minus before Creep. I like Creep as a song.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a creep.
It just has like random palm muted chords at the right time that really get me going.
Yeah, and then as in radio true tradition, they go into Climbing Walls, which you can't understand what he's saying.
So yeah, he has a fair bit of fuzz over his vocals. And this track is
Distorted.
probably a little bit less accessible to me. It's not a track that I enjoy listening to on repeated listens. It's slow, it's moody, it's atmospheric. I sort of get that, but I tend to skip it, especially given No Surprises is the next track,
Which
I
is
really
probably
quite like.
which is number 3 on the list of their big songs, and you're probably another one of your favorites.
This one's definitely one of my favorites. As we said last week, this song captures the juxtaposition between the prettiness of the music is measured only by the abdication of responsibility that the character in the song experiences. So the happier the music, it's almost like the more defeated the circumstance broadly is. You know, her heart is filling up with landfill. You know, she's going to take a handshake of carbon monoxide because she wants to live a life of no alarms and no surprises. It's
yeah.
like, in some sense, it's a giving up song.
With a lullaby behind it.
It's pretty, right? And it really has like shades of like sirens out at sea lulling fishermen to their death. It's really just like the prettier the music is, the more emotionally damning it kind of feels. And that's probably why I really, really like this track, and why I guess the track is well liked by people, I suppose.
I guess so.
If it is, as you say, one of their top tracks.
Lucky. I said this last... we're going to keep saying that, and we should probably stop saying that. Last time I said
It's going
this...
to ruin the podcast.
It really is. It's got this Foxy Lady feel, and then it drops into a long fat bass, which I enjoy. It's always fun hearing a little bit of fat instruments getting a heavy tone going on, and that Lucky brings that out, and it's pretty good. But soft throughout. The jam session at the end is what really just gives you a chance to soak up the whole song, and that's probably my favorite part of this song. But yeah, it's not bad. It's good.
I tend to think this album has something of a bit of a slow finish.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It sort of gives you a chance to soak it up.
Yeah, it ends up being a case, though, that the more I listen to the album, I find myself listening to particular tracks rather than needing to hear it as a cohesive piece of work. Which I don't know whether that's good or bad. My preference is always, if the album is deserving of it, I would love to just push play at the start and have it go through the whole way and absorb it as a single piece. But now that we're sort of 2 weeks basically into listening to this album, I've probably listened to the album conservatively 15, 16 times now.
Yeah.
I'm skipping tracks.
Of course you're skipping
And
tracks.
Once I get to the end of No Surprises, I listen to the start of Lucky and go, oh yeah, skip to the Tourist. And I like the idea of the Tourist, but
I take my headphones off when the tourist comes on.
yeah, I like the Tourist. It feel like the idea of it is cool. It's like you're a tourist in your homeland because of the foreign thoughtscape that's out there. I dig it as a concept. And you know, hey man, slow down. I quite like as a hook. It's just you got to wait 2.5 minutes for it. And in terms of digesting it, I just think there are tracks on the album that do it better. I still think it's a good closer to the album, but
Oh yeah, it's probably a suitable song for it. It was
Yeah.
always going to be. I mean, when Tom was sorting out the list, he was always putting the Tourist as the last
Yeah.
song. There was no doubt about it. So I've read that interview. Would you chop and change anything, or is this which songs are you skipping? Which songs are you wanting to listen to?
I'm skipping Subterranean, Homesick Alien. I'm skipping... And then, funnily enough, I'll probably listen to the whole album up until Climbing Up the Walls. I'll skip that, listen to No Surprises, pretend that's the last song on the album, and move somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with the second half. Climbing Up the Walls, I'd script No Surprises. Lucky, I might be getting through it. I'll actually
You
probably
like
listen to
Subterranean.
Lucky. And I love Subterranean,
Yeah.
but you know, I'm besides the Stephen Hawking's, only skipping.
Bit of happier, yeah.
Yeah, Climbing Up the Walls. There's only one song, but it's only because I won't rush to change the songs. It's fine for it to play out. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
It's not like some other albums where it's like no, 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 yes.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the better albums where it only gets one skip, whereas there's been a lot where I only want to listen to 3 songs out of 12.
As a cohesive work, like some of them are just more preferential choices, but I think it's stitched together quite well.
Yep.
And I think
And it's probably the reason why it is considered one of the
that's
best
exactly
albums.
right. Like that's the one thing I take away from it is I can see why it is as well liked as it is by the fan base, and I can see how well it has influenced large pockets of music. I would be totally surprised if anyone who's listened to any indie or alternative music hasn't listened to something that would have been influenced by Radiohead, just given this album. And this album came out in 1997, and some of the ideas and constructions in it must have been ahead of their time. How old was I in 1997? I would have been 9, so I wouldn't have been able to conceive of what the social circumstances were. But this must have been particularly forward-thinking, I suspect. And no wonder it is so well revered. And for that, I mean, it earns a lot of kudos in my book, just how well it's really stood the test of time. It felt like we were listening to...
just a normal album that could have been produced
Could have been produced today, really.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one or two little things in the mix that you might have been sharpened up by, Pro Tools 2020 or whatever the case might be. But it's a well put together album. Yeah, I was satisfied and relieved as well that I enjoyed it as much as I did.
Well, I think we're always going to enjoy probably the best album of some artist or band.
You were still pretty hesitant when I suggested
I'm still hesitant listening to Radiohead no matter what. It's not my cup of tea.
Yep.
But I'm not rushing to put this album on, but if someone asks me if I've ever listened to it, I'll be like, it's pretty good.
Yeah, this would be an album you would suggest.
No.
So if some of your friends were like, I'm really looking for some alternative rock.
I wouldn't know what to give it someone like one alternative rock.
Do
There's
now.
such a large genre of alternative rock.
Sure.
You can call Pixel Bar for alternative.
Oh, you'd be stretching the friendship with that. Maybe save that for the next podcast.
Okay. Which is in like 5 minutes. Okay,
Because
so
we're talking like everyone knows what the hell's going on.
okay, so
We don't.
let's stop. Let's stop.
Do you want to give a score?
No.
Okay, I'm going to give what score I gave it last time. I gave it 7.5 out of 10 last time.
Yep.
My impressions may have changed, but you'll have to tune into.
But you'll have to
next
tune
podcast.
in for 5 minutes because we are going to do an end of year review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Round up the whole year and.
Which is kind of funny to do considering none of the videos have dropped out there for anyone to listen to. So this is going to be very much backdated.
This is very a selfish thing between us.
Oh, I'm doing it for the passion. Fuck
Oh,
everyone else.
absolutely.
I mean, I appreciate you for watching, but I did it for us.
So I would highly encourage people who have any sort of rock persuasion to go and listen to this. It is a good piece of rock architecture. I see it as something of a
Well structured,
Yeah.
Well,
It's a building
testing.
block. It's a building block for how certain aspects of the alternative rock movement went.
Yeah.
I would say required listening if you're interested in that space.
And 23 years later, it's still quite relevant. If it was dropped, no one would even know the difference, I reckon.
That being said, I'm looking forward to not listening to it tomorrow.
Yes.
We've been CDR. Please don't corrupt when we push stop, and we'll be back.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.